Hey folks, someone asked me last week, Orton Gillingham versus structured literacy. What's the difference and which is the best one for me? And I thought it was a great question, so let's answer that. Hello, I'm Nicola Lott. I'm an educational interventionist certified through CAT OG. I specialise in supporting kids who have language-based learning differences like dyslexia using research-based strategies. You can find me at notchilllearning.com. Okay, so Orton Gillingham versus structured literacy. The two sound kind of similar, and if you've been told to go and look for Orton Gillingham and you're finding structured literacy and you're wondering if it's the same thing or vice versa, let's dig into it and see what the differences actually are. Okay, so let's just do a little bit of history before we get into this. So in the 1920s, we're in Massachusetts in the USA. And an eminent doctor, Dr. Samuel Orton, who is a neuropsychologist and pathologist, was studying brains by doing dissections of the brains of people who've died of brain injuries. And he's learning an awful lot about the anatomy of the brain and the structures within the brain. And he gets interested in these kids who can't read. And he starts to figure out, using the research that he's been conducting, that there is a brain difference in these kids potentially. This is before the era of scans, so it's amazing how much they figured out. And he got together with Anna Gillingham, who is a educator and a psychologist, and Bessie Stillman, who is another gifted teacher, and together they created a multisensory phonics-based approach for reading intervention. And they published some books on this. They called it the Orton Gillingham approach, and it was a game changer. So when you see here this term OG, it's always in the past stood for Orton Gillingham. Although today we are seeing that it means original gangster. So just so you know, I'm talking about Orton Gillingham. If you're looking for videos on original gangsters, you're going to have to find somewhere else. Okay, so when Dr. Orton died, his wife created the Orton Society as a way to continue the research into these differences that he had given his life to studying. They changed their name eventually to the Orton Dyslexia Society, and then it changed to the International Dyslexia Society. Now, the International Dyslexia Society have always stayed ideologically neutral. They are a research-focused organization that focuses on the research around learning differences. And they created, in 2010, they created their knowledge practice standards, which is like everything that they know from the research that supports children with learning differences, and they have created the term structured literacy as the name of what, like, all the best practices that we know of for supporting children with learning differences. So structured literacy kind of came from the term multisensory structured literacy, but I think everyone realized that was a bit of a mouthful, so that's where structured literacy's name has come from. So think of structured literacy as a umbrella term that pulls in all of the research-based strategies that we know for teaching children to read, regardless of whether they have a learning difference or not. This is what the research is telling us are best practices. Okay, so the Orton Gillingham approach comes directly from Orton and Gillingham and Stillman. They published some manuals and they trained across America at the time. It's a multisensory phonics-based approach. It is an approach, not a system. So if you think about French cooking is an approach to cooking. It's a style of cooking. But you might go to a cooking class to learn French cooking from somebody who has created their way of cooking French style. So that would be a system. So Orton Gillingham is the approach, like French cooking is an approach. We are not a system. It is not a system. And because it's an approach, it means it doesn't say static. It means that it has evolved with the research since the 1920s. Yeah, it just stays up to date with the research. It just follows the research, but it uses a way of teaching that research-based information. Many people have tried to systematize Orton Gillingham, and some of them have been quite successful. So there's many spin-off systems that are based on the Orton Gillingham approach. So you will know if it's a system and not an approach if someone starts telling you a very specific order that you have to teach things in. If it's a very specific order, then you're on a system, and if you're told you follow what's going to work for the child, then you're on an approach. That's kind of the difference. There's nothing wrong with systems. They're just different to Orton Gillingham. So the similarities between structured literacy and Orton Gillingham, they both have the same kind of historical start point. They both focus on explicit and structured instruction. They both are diagnostic. We both support the Literacy 5, so that's phonological awareness, phonics, reading fluency, reading comprehension, vocabulary instruction. And they both focus on being multisensory. So if you think that structured literacy provides the what, and then OG provides more detail on the how are we actually going to dispense that instruction. So I like to think structured literacy as kind of an umbrella term under which you have Orton Gillingham and other approaches and systems that are following the research. And of course, under OG, there are OG-based systems. So if you are looking and you're at an approach or a system and you're kind of tearing your hair out and you're trying to figure out, is this what I've been told to do or not? I recommend you go to the What Works Clearinghouse. It's a US government website where they take systems and they compare them to the research, and they basically give them a rating on how effective they actually are. If you look in there for Orton Gillingham, it's not really able to say much about Orton Gillingham because Orton Gillingham is approach and it varies from practitioner to practitioner. Because Orton Gillingham follows the research, it doesn't create research, if you see what I mean. So, but it does pretty good for anything that is a system, and they have a lot of information in there, and I find it very useful. Hopefully you're feeling better. Did you understand now the differences and kind of how it all comes together? If you're from the UK, you may be sitting there thinking, Orton Gillingham, I've never heard it. I'm personally British, from a British family. I'm dyslexic, and my mother was an interventionist, so I went through all of that in the UK, and I never encountered Orton Gillingham until I came to North America. Because Samuel Orton was American, this is a largely North American terminology. They do have, in the UK, they have the British Dyslexia Association, and they have followed the research too, and they have training courses and systems, so it's similar. It's just using British terminology, and there is some Orton Gillingham in the UK these days, so you may have heard of it. So how does my virtual mentoring approach work with all of this? So it is a structured literacy approach. We absolutely follow the research. I like to think of it as a structured literacy approach because I do like to bring in other useful pieces of research and practices that maybe don't fall traditionally under Orton Gillingham, but I am an Orton Gillingham practitioner, certified Orton Gillingham practitioner, so it definitely has an OG flavor to it. I can't call it Orton Gillingham because I'm not working one-to-one with a child. I don't think it really is quite Orton Gillingham, but what it does do is it provides the families with an opportunity to help your child in an affordable way and on your own time schedule. So I think it's sort of the best of all worlds. Thanks! I hope you found that was helpful. If you'd like any more information, go on and check out my website at notchhilllearning.com.